Well, here we are again. We're back on the air, and this is Radio Entrepreneur. Excuse me. In our reformulated version, we're streaming more stories than ever before. And actually, our viewership is way up thanks to all of you who've been tuning in to find out how people are working in this new economy, staying engaged with the economy, and helping clients. Our next guest has been a repeat guest for us. I guess she's one of our favorites. Danielle Justo, co-chair of real estate at Rich May Law. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. This has been a wonderful opportunity for me coming on your show. And there's a very smart guy across the Zoom from me, originally from Montreal, who told me, look for silver linings during COVID, look for opportunities. And this has been a great one, being able to meet so many people on Zoom and get messages out there.
I thought you were going to mention my list to you about what to visit in Montreal.
Oh, I know. That was amazing. Smoked salmon and bagels that we had.
I'm looking forward to the borders opening up. I know Trudeau extended the deadline. Be nice to get back to Montreal one of these days, a little bit more normal. But you're deep into one of the most the areas of the economy that I'm hearing the most talk about, and that is, real estate and rents and tenants. So I'm wondering if you could talk to us about what's been going on, what you're seeing, the sort of the do's and the don'ts.
What I wanted to come on today was I think that the message I want to get out is that I think that cooperation between landlords and tenants is where everyone is going to be the most efficient, and it's be the most fruitful results during this time period. So we have both at Rich May, we have a team of 5 real estate lawyers who my team is amazing, and we've had all running the gamut on problems and issues and how we're going to solve them. And basically we represent both commercial and tenants and landlords. So from all different restaurants and retail and offices and manufacturing. So what we're seeing is what we need to fit. It's not one size fits all. So what we're doing is adapting an amendment to leases so that people get it in writing what they do agree to. Because this is a tough time, but as a landlord, you can't necessarily forego rent for the whole period. You've got mortgages to pay, you've got different obligations. And the same thing for the tenant. They're trying to just stay in business when they can't open their doors sometimes. So we have different iterations of what people are negotiating that we get in writing. And one thing is just, if you're familiar with the term abatement, landlords are just foregoing rent during the 3 months. And others are deferring rent. So deferring it either to the end of the lease or the end of the COVID period. So 6 months from now, they'll pay that as a lump sum. That doesn't work for all tenants. So some landlords are giving them installment payments. So paying over the last 6 months of the lease equally, these 3 months. And another interesting aspect of it is doing what a mortgage company does, which is amortizing the rent. So giving a low interest rate, but paying a portion of it, principal and interest, over the rest of the term of the lease. So these are the kind of things people are negotiating to try to keep the tenants in, but keep the landlords from, bankruptcy or defaulting on their mortgages, and coming to a happy result where everybody will hopefully get restored and be able to survive during this period.
Wow, that's a lot going on. But you talked about forgiving rents and then negotiating a settlement. I don't see how these big landlords can forgive rents for 3 months. They need that cash flow as much as the tenants do. I mean, that could just put too much strain on them.
So there's consideration that some of the landlords have been looking at in exchange for this period. So one of the things is extending the options. So if they have a good tenant who they want to keep in for a longer time, and they were supposed to in a year extend their option and stay another 5 or 10 years, if they make sure they're a creditworthy tenant, make sure they have a succession plan, not like if you have a single entrepreneur, and this will resonate with some of your viewers who are entrepreneurs and speakers. You want to make sure you have a succession plan for that entrepreneur, that there's somebody else going to partner, or somebody's going to step in and keep running that business. So you want to make sure those two things when you're a landlord and you negotiate the option. But sometimes having a bird in hand, is worth it to keep them in, even if you have to forego for a short time the rent for this period. And I just negotiated one for a retail tenant who has to have their doors closed And basically we added the 3 months to the end of the lease. So it's as if this whole 3-month COVID, and I think everybody wants to do this, make the whole period disappear. So it's as if it didn't exist. And then we extended the lease for 3 months. So they're not paying now, but one really important thing I want to make sure I get out there is there's something called additional rent that most folks have different terms for it. But if you have something called a triple net lease where you're not, where the tenant is paying the insurance and the taxes and the utilities and things like that directly, who's paying that? If you say, okay, you don't have to pay rent, or you have to pay half of your rent, or you have to pay rent at the end, but who's paying those obligations? Because one thing you don't want is an uninsured building. And another thing is you don't want to lien for non-payment of certain utilities, and you don't want to lien for taxes necessarily. So if it was worse weather, also, you don't want your pipes to freeze and things like that, or security cameras to go off. So you want to make sure those obligations are put into an amendment saying the tenant is still paying these, or the tenant's not paying these, the landlord has taken these up. Whatever it is, you need to make sure you know who's doing those obligations, because the last thing I want to say is just about that is just that tax abatements. If you don't pay your taxes on time, you may be losing your rights to an abatement. And it's both landlords and tenants who pay 50% of the rent that can file for a real estate tax abatement. So you don't want to lose that opportunity to be able to file those.
Well, I've been thinking a lot. I know your conversation could be, residents, but also I'm thinking about commercial real estate, a lot of the strip malls and bigger malls. And I'm thinking that, is this just the beginning of what we're going to see of maybe potentially a lot of bankruptcies and lawsuits over the next year or so, if the economy continues to sort of shift away from retail? I think that, there's more to come in this story, and we're just at the beginning of the book.
One of my partners and I did a webinar. He may be speaking to David Glaude, and we talked a little bit about the eviction moratorium. Unfortunately, for the smaller tenants who are not national, there isn't, and unfortunately for the landlords, actually, those tenants can't be evicted even in the commercial setting. And there's a lot of detail to that, and there's special form notices to send out and everything, but for non-payment of rent. So the landlords may not have that choice. So because of the moratorium on evictions, and that's also for the residential setting. So I think we're going to be seeing an inflow once that moratorium is over of evictions, and the bankruptcies kind of go hand in hand.
On both sides.
Fortunately, on both sides, right?
Right, because the tenants are going to have trouble with cash, and that means the landlords are going to have trouble with cash.
And so I think there's some solutions that we haven't talked about. And one of them is for a tenant, you don't want to default, because one of the things you might want to do is assign the lease or sublet the lease. If your landlord doesn't have another tenant available, there may be somebody who can move in. Maybe it's the tenant abutting, in the abutting space, you might want to expand, who's doing well in this. Maybe they're a toilet paper salesman or something. So they might be able to expand into this. And then, you might want to be able to, as a landlord, you might want to think about reducing that tenant space and helping them stay in and be able to stay in to that.
Right. We've been speaking with Danielle Justo, co-chair real estate, Rich May Law. Danielle, if someone's looking for you and some assistance on either side to make sure that they don't get into these problems, how would they find you?
So my email address is djusto@richmaylaw.com. Our website is www.richmaylaw.com. And we have a fantastic COVID page with a lot of content about things like the eviction moratorium, lease amendments, and opening up businesses, which is happening very soon, and how to do that properly and legally. And I'm happy to just talk to folks about what we're seeing and the types of amendments we can do. And they're very short form. It's short dollars for, long-term peace of mind.
That's good. Just a personal note before you go, you're home, you have kids at home. Yes. I don't have kids at home anymore. And do you like working at home, or are you looking forward to getting back to an office?
it puts a whole new meaning to multitasking, that's for sure. Between the homeschooling and we're learning about the ride of Paul Revere 1 second, we're doing fractions the next second, and 24/7 hour diner. But I do have to tell you, I told my 6-year-old that we were doing a Zoom interview this morning, so she wanted to know if I get all the answers to the questions right, what prize do I get?
Wow, that's cool. Tell her you got all the questions right. So nice speaking with you. We look forward to having you on the show again through the year as things change, because we know you're in a very dynamic part of the marketplace. So remind everybody, this is Radio Entrepreneurs, and we'll be right back with more stories.